morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio, and today we've got more surprising news coming out of Japan. Now, I assumed that last Sunday was going to give us all of the excitement we needed. Turns out, not the case, because Japan have gone and banned a bunch of cards. Now, this is in their expanded format. This is not in their standard format. It is in their expanded format. Now, we have largely covered Japan's bans over here as well, though some of the more recent bans that they've had, like Reset Stamp, haven't actually made their way over here yet. So, expect these to be banned in expanded, but don't necessarily expect them to be banned in the next 5 minutes. So there's a few too many to drop them all in one video. So what we're going to do is take a look at the 3 Pokemon in this video which have gone and been banned. And the first one probably shouldn't surprise you very much at all. It's Marshadow. Marshadow has gone and been banned in the expanded format over in Japan. And it's kind of like, well, of course it has. Marshadow is no fun. You see, Marshadow's got an ability. It's not a new ability, it's not a unique ability, it's Let Loose. We had a Giratina in Platinum that had the exact same ability. And what it does is it forces both players to shuffle their hand into their deck and draw 4 cards. It's a judge, but has an ability. Why do we hate this? And the reason is, if you go first, you can drop this on your opponent, and then they're going to start their turn with 4 cards, which means that there is far less of a chance that they're going to get rolling, and far more of a chance that they're just going to give up and lose the game immediately. Now, at this stage, we need to go, well, hang on a second. Why don't they ban Judge? And the reason, very simply, is Judge is your supporter for the turn. If you hurt yourself with Judge, you hurt yourself with Judge and your opponent. Whereas with Marshadow, fine, you hurt yourself as well, but you've got the rest of your turn to set up. You can use your supporter. You can find your Oranguru, which is still legal and expanded. You've got time to get up and rolling. You use something like a Cynthia or a Sycamore, and then you drop the Marshadow. The difference is that with a Judge, you don't get time to prep, you're hurt like your opponent is. You get to play your hand first, but then you play the Judge. Whereas with Marshadow, you can play your turn, use a supporter, and then as your final thing for the turn, oh yeah, and I'll drop a Marshadow. Before Marshadow rotated out of standard, we had all won and lost games because we dropped a Marshadow down turn 1. And our opponent couldn't do anything. Or we couldn't do anything depending who it was, and it was over, it was done. Those games aren't fun. If we look at the kind of bans that have been instituted in the Pokemon trading card game lately, we're looking at things like Jesse and James, we're looking at things like Getsis, we're looking at things like Wally, which can give a turn 1 Trevenant. And what all of these have in common is, it stops you playing the game. It is no fun to sit down for a game of Pokemon, shake hands with your opponent drops a Marshadow, you don't draw enough, they win in 2 or 3 turns. That's not a fun game. No one enjoys those games. Now, the thing that's important to note here is that the article up on the Japanese website, which announced these, has made it very clear that these bans are in response to the expanded tournament that happened at the Tokyo Regionals, or Championships, whatever you want to call it, this past weekend. And frankly, it's just not as much fun. This decision was made so that everyone can enjoy extra regulation in a battle environment where more cards and decks can play an active role. It really restricts your options. If you're playing a more evolution deck, a harder to play deck, Marshadow is even worse. Now, the other card that's been banned, which we have at the moment, is Misdreavus. And I find this very interesting. Now, Misdreavus on its own is fairly unassuming. Now, it's a good card, don't get me wrong. The ability says you give up a prize, draw until you got 7 cards in your hand. Now, you do have to KO Misdreavus and give up a prize. You draw till you got 7 cards in hand. Okay. Fine. I suppose. The thing is, Misdreavus gives so many advantages. Now, firstly, it just lets you draw a bunch of cards. And all of the degenerate things that went and did well in Expanded, generally speaking, need a bit of setup. Most decks need a bit of setup. This gives you lots and lots of speed. And that's kind of wonderful. If anybody's wondering, the winner of the Expanded tournament over in Japan this weekend was actually a Garchomp and Giratina deck, which I might take a look at if we get a little bit of time a little bit later on. But what's interesting is being behind on prizes isn't necessarily a bad thing. Because you see, there were two cards used in this deck that really help if you're behind on prizes. Karate Belt and Lieutenant Surge's Strategy. You see, if you just want to draw lots of cards turn 1, we've got Shaman. We've got Dedenne. Drawing cards turn 1 is huge, gives you a big advantage, needs to be slowed down, etc. But the thing is, going behind on prizes changes everything. Garchomp and Giratina does 160 damage, 240 if the Pokemon's already got damage on, for a Psychic Fighting Colourless Energy. The thing is, in Expanded, we still got double Dragon Energy. And Karate Bout reduces your attack cost by 1 fighting energy if you're behind on prizes. So if you use Misdreavus, then all of a sudden you attach Karate Belt and double Dragon Energy, and you got turn 1 160, unless you can drop some damage on your opponent, in which case it's 240. That's the difference here. And this deck, right, it played 2 copies of Hooper to search out GXs, 3 copies of Jirachi to search out supporters, and 4 copies of Shaman. This was a turbo deck, and it was gonna work, and it was getting consistent every single, it must have done. 160, 160, 160, you can't keep up. And that's kind of the problem here. Not to mention, of course, that if you go behind on prizes, you can then end your opponent, and then your opponent has a lower hand size. Very, very much like we just talked about with Marshadow. Now, you could just ban Duskstone here, because Misdreavus gets going turn 1 because of Duskstone. You evolve up using Duskstone straight away, and then you can use it turn 1. It actually searches the Misdreavus as well. But the thing is, Duskstone isn't just for Misdreavus. It's for Aegislash, it's for Honchkrow, it's for Chandelure, including GXs. It's for every other Misdreavus. Yeah, sure, you could ban Duskstone if you wanted, but that doesn't really solve the problem. Yes, we banned Maxies, but the reason we banned Maxies was because you had Archeops, which was a bit degenerative. And we had Kabutops, which was a bit degenerative. And we had Omastar, which was a bit degenerative. And all of a sudden, you've got a lot of different things that you can use to win using that one card, so we don't mind banning Maxies. We don't need to ban Duskstone, and maybe there'll be something else in the future. For now, Misdreavus is enough. It's not just drawing cards, it's also going behind on prizes. But the other card that's gone and been banned is Flabebe. And the thing is, it's not a new Flabebe. It is the one that came out in Forbidden Light, the 30 HP one that has evolutionary advantage. If you go second, this Pokemon can evolve during your first turn. Well, that's not been relevant up to now, but it's about to get relevant. Because you see, we are getting a Floette that has a very annoying ability, whereby when you evolve into it, you may choose one of the cards in your opponent's hand at random. Your opponent shuffles it into their deck. Well, that's annoying. Now, to be fair, evolutionary advantage only works going second. You give your opponent a turn, but remember, your opponent cannot play supporters turn 1 now, and cannot attack turn 1 now. Although, to be fair, the no supporters rule comes in November 29th. These cards are banned as of the 4th of October in Japan. That's next Friday. Okay, fair enough. But the point here is that what if you get 4 Flabebe? and you evolve into 4 Floette, and then you're getting 4 cards out of your opponent's hand back into their deck. There is a huge theme going on here, and it is the same theme that's been going on with bans for a couple of years. Stopping your opponent playing the game isn't fun, nobody enjoys it, so we stop it. It's the reason Jesse and James got banned. I'll pop a link to that video in the description. It's the reason why Marshadow's getting banned. Hand Disruption, all of a sudden, is something that Pokemon is rallying against. I find it interesting that they're printing these cards only to then go and ban them, but I think the honest answer is that the people making the cards and the people deciding on bans aren't the same people. And let's be clear, these cards might not look too bad, but then you get into an expanded format. Japan's just had a giant expanded tournament. They've been able to make a decision as to which of these cards are or are not bad and broken and ruining the game. And they've decided that Flabebe is. Now, incidentally, there is also a Florges coming out, which has a superpowered version of this ability. When you evolve up, you choose 2 random cards from your opponent's hand and shuffle them back into their deck. And if you do go Florges here, then instead of having turn 2 Floette, turn 3 Florges, you're going turn 1 Floette, turn 2 Florges, which is before your opponent's had a really good go at setting up, and then you're already wrecking their hand. So your opponent's had like 1 turn to try and get rolling, and then their entire hand is getting wrecked. No, ladies and gentlemen. It's not fun. No one enjoys it. Now, there is, incidentally, or there are, I should say, some trainer cards that have been banned as well. That video is going to be coming in about an hour, hour and a half time. Far too much to get into one video. For the time being, Marshadow, Misdreavus, Floette. Florges is not banned. You can still go Florges, but Florges is way more difficult to get out. Either you need to go Rare Candy, or you need to go for the traditional route. And Floette isn't banned either. It is just Flabebe that's actually been banned, because it speeds up by a turn, which gives your opponent 1 less turn to get rolling, which we don't want. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Weird bans, but you kind of see where they're coming from. At this stage, I'd like to know what you think of these bans. Do you think they're fair? Do you think they're over the top? Do you think we need them in this country? By which I mean anywhere outside of Japan. And do you think we're going to be getting them? Go nuts in the comment section. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do please make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.